In my past year of hyperfixating over all kinds of AlphaDream media, there's been one thing that's gone over my head. Hell, almost the entire internet's head for the past decade. Today, let's unveil this video game AlphaDream developed and how it became lost media likely forever. It all started around 2 months ago, when I was researching AlphaDream stuff as usual. Somewhere while I was looking into more info on Kaname no Kanjiro Fit and Run, I stumbled onto AlphaDream's Wikipedia page, the Japanese version. Everything looked normal, but as soon as I scrolled further down, I realized something. Their game list seemed longer. Upon taking a closer glance, I saw this. First thing I noticed is that the software being listed as just Baru, and this confused me in several different ways. I've never heard of a console called Baru. Even if it was a Japanese exclusive console, I assumed I would have heard of it at some point, so I looked closer. After getting a rough translation of the name and the publisher, the game was called Squares Flowed as Abundant as Stars, or some other name in similar phrasing, like Squares Shed as many as a number of stars, and this really made me confused. Obviously, I expected this to be Japan exclusive, but the name made little to no sense. Searching into Brew, it isn't actually a console. It's a development platform specifically for mobile games. So for a mobile game, it makes more sense. As a console game, it would be much more known. But what even was this game? So I checked the publisher. It translated to Mobcast, which sounded a bit more normal and a reasonable lead to start with. Thankfully, it was easy enough to find out more about Mobcast. I found out while Mobcast started out with much smaller things like Japanese mobile games, they've heavily expanded into a corporate giant across Japan with several different divisions with stuff like XR, technology, social problem-solving entertainment, reviving humans. And then I found out that their games division got switched to some metaverse crypto weird thing. No, seriously, they basically butchered their games division to work on NFT stuff and a project to, quote, use virtual race queens to convey the appeal of motorsports and increase the number of motorsports fans. What the actual hell? This has become my goofiest thing to research, and apparently these VTubers have been getting so much slander, including on bulletin boards, that the company needed to make a press statement saying that they will take legal action if people make malicious posts about them. Hey, this is Future Lizardy, and I just found out that all of these VTubers' YouTube channels have been deleted, and none of their Twitter accounts have had any activity recently, so I think they're just gone now. Can we get more mobile games then? What has this investigation turned into? Anyway, we need to get back on track. As I said, Xverse now, deleted all mentions of their older works outside of a timeline which was actually quite useful. In 2005, the company launched Mob Game exclusively for mobile phones, which lined up closely with the 2007 release date of Square Flow Star Number Square game thing. So I looked into that service more. I didn't find much from that though. Thankfully, my brain would soon click and I just searched up the original name of the Japanese game, which worked a lot better. Most search results were irrelevant, but I found a Wikipedia page filled with Mobcast developed mobile games for a 100 yen mob game service thing. Now I finally had some knowledge of what the heck this game was. The genre was a puzzle game, which I did assume because squares. There was a brief description of what the gameplay is like, so I'll read it. A puzzle game in which you move the red main block up, down, left, right, and stick the flowing blocks to the main body, creating squares of 2x2 or more within the time limit and erasing them. In addition, blocks flow from the left and right, and you can freely attach them anywhere on the top, bottom, left, or right of the main body? It's a bit confusing because it's a Google Translate translation, but now we have a general idea of what the gameplay is like. I still haven't even taken the time to actually process what the hell this would play like, but it probably makes sense. So now we know what the game is, but there's no images or footage of it, like anywhere. Searching it, we can't find anything. The same Wikipedia site doesn't give us any images of it. It's yet another roadblock. Although, on another one of these 100 yen games, they did link a press release article for when the game was released, and it gave me an idea. All games have their own press releases, and they seem to be archived with the Wayback Machine, my saving grace for every time I go on these little investigations. I noticed on the press release there was a series of numbers that actually aligned with the date the game was published. I ended up trying to do the same thing with the Square game, which I found out was March 8th of 2007, but it didn't work. I had to change tactics again. With the press release thing, I remembered the Wayback Machine and thought it'd be useful to go back on Mobcast's old site to see if I could find any info there. And it worked flawlessly. Thankfully, the site had been archived thousands of times in the past, and I could just go back to any of the moments when it was and see what the site looked like at that time. Right off the bat, at the top of the news section was the announcement of the game's release. Google Translate is making this a lot stranger, because every time I'm seeing this game's description, it seems to be getting more and more cryptic. Like now, apparently my main block thing is supposed to be an aircraft? I'm really starting to get curious about what this game looks like. Regardless, this was huge. We now had access to the press release, and from looking at the other one from earlier, they're bound to have images of gameplay. And images it had. Now let me give you everything we know about this Square game. Released on March 8th, 2007, developed by AlphaDream and published onto the 100 yen mob game service, you pay 100 yen to get the game, was a game called Big Bang Block. Big Bang Block is a side-scrolling action puzzle game in which you control a block to create and erase squares of 2x2 or larger by attaching the numerous blocks flowing from the left and right. The game could be played on older Japanese mobile phones that were specifically compatible with Brew. We know the game's official English name is seemingly Big Bang Block because of the images found on the article, so this is what Big Bang Block looked like. Pretty simplistic, kinda what I was expecting. Now my final question. Is this game lost media? This I needed to figure out desperately for a good YouTube title. I mean, it sure seemed like lost media. To my knowledge, there are no traces of images nor gameplay on the internet outside of this website, and I've tried digging. I'm no expert on what's considered lost media, because this game we technically have images of, so I don't know if that technically counts as it's partially lost or not, so let me know in the comments. In general, as you likely already know, no one knows this game exists, at least in the West. Maybe there's like a few people, like I did see a pretty old Twitter post about someone who found it, but outside of that, no one talked about it. Next, I had to try to figure out if I could contact someone who had the game and could possibly record gameplay if I begged nicely enough. Somehow, I did. I found some decade-old tweets about a Japanese person really enjoying the game. I messaged the person who was shockingly still active, and they responded. I told them about the situation, and I asked if they were able to play the game and possibly record gameplay, and anxiously waited for another response. They got back to me, and sadly the game is likely completely lost. Let me put things into perspective here. In order to play Big Bang Block, you need a very specific old Japanese phone, you need to have already purchased the game over a decade ago, and what I found out by messaging this person is that you needed an internet connection, specifically older internet connection, like from a decade ago. I'm not sure how differently internet connections work in Japan, but if it's anything like in the US, hypothetically if you had all of the following and you connected to an old Wi-Fi router, you might be able to make it work, but even then it's not very likely. This somewhat reminds me of trying to connect to the internet on a Wii in modern times, where an alternative was to connect a specific version of a hotspot using a phone to the Wii, so it would temporarily act as old Wi-Fi. But there's so many factors, like I don't understand how hotspots work in Japan, and I don't want to bug this person anymore, so I felt like the case was closed. Honestly, the thing is, I'm happy with what we got. We now have actual pictures of what the game looks like, a good description of it, and what specifically it's on. The funny thing is, Big Bang Block has been under our noses this entire time. AlphaDream's website actually included it in their works. From when their works page was last updated near 2018-ish, it included all of their games in chronological order of when they were made. But Big Bang Block is all the way at the bottom, practically hidden. Probably because it's a much smaller scale project, but if they just didn't put it all the way at the bottom, I'm positive myself and a lot more people would have found out about it earlier. So that's basically everything I found out about Big Bang Block. A unique mobile game that's now lost to time. I'm starting to see a trend here. There's so many of these old Japanese mobile games that are lost to time, not even just Mobcast ones. It really makes me hope that someday we'll be able to find a way to properly preserve these games. Like maybe if Mobcast dumps the files online? I would genuinely pay Mobcast for them to just upload the files of Big Bang Block. I'll buy their all-purpose hotpot for it. The person I talked with who had the game thought it was pretty fun, and now I'm interested. So I sent a message to Mobcast, so they better respond to it, or else I'll make a billboard slandering their VTubers. But I digress. Thank you for watching this journey of me discovering Big Bang Block, and hopefully more people now can be aware of its existence. Unless everyone already does, and they just hate it so much they refuse to talk about it, so I'm making a fool of myself. AlphaDream has been a big part of this channel, even if it seems like it hasn't. Ever since I got that email from a former employee, I knew I had to make this channel and document it, and in general just talk about their legacy. I'm genuinely sorry if I seem hyper obsessed with this old, small, defunct game studio, but I miss them a lot. Their games meant the world to me, mainly Mario Luigi, and I feel like I'm indebted to them. They deserved so much better. Thank you for watching.